Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is still Victor Shi. It is Wednesday, January 18th. As we are seeing with the Republican Party in the House so far, they are a mess, and that's putting it gently. They are showing that they have no intention to care for the American people. They have no desire to help improve American lives with real policies. And instead, they're more intent on launching baseless investigations into Democrats and President Biden. They make it their goal to stoke as much fear and chaos as possible at the expense of the American people and the functioning of democracy. And just yesterday, we saw their unseriousness to actually govern with the committee assignments that they assigned. And particularly, there's one person at the center of all of this who is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And luckily, we don't have Marjorie Taylor Greene with us today, but we do have Marcus Flowers with us, who challenged Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia in the 2022 midterm election. Although he came short, he remains an important and an essential voice for Democrats. And I suspect his last race won't be the last we see from him. Marcus, thanks so much for being here. It's so great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Victor.
Of course. So I want to start off by asking you and taking a step back about your run against Marjorie Taylor Greene. First, walk us through what it was like to run against an opponent like Marjorie.
Well, Victor, what really got me into that race was the events of January 6th.
Yeah.
Going back in my background, I've served this country since I was 18 years old, when I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States as a soldier in the United States Army. After leaving the Army, I became a defense contractor and later on a government official for the Department of Defense. So to put it, lightly or bluntly rather, service to this country has been my life.
Yeah.
And seeing the events of January 6th is what really drew me in. I resigned my post as a government official on January 7th to run against Marjorie Taylor Greene because I saw her pushing the big lie leading up to January 6th.
Yeah.
And I knew that the kind of things that she was espousing, that's not who we are here in Georgia. That's not who we are here in this country. That minority of conspiracy theorists and, those who want to push this country way, way far right, they're given an outsized voice in our country, but they are a minority. And I think it's incumbent upon us who really believe in this country and believe in democracy and want to see equality across the board. It's incumbent upon us to push back against that far right fringe, those like Marjorie Taylor Greene, those like Donald Trump, those like Paul Gosar, Lauren Boebert. We have to push back to get this country to where we need it to be. And that's giving us all a voice and making sure that we're all heard. So that's what got me into the race. How was it running against Marjorie Taylor Greene, more specifically to your question? It was what I thought it was. I got out and I talked with the people here in Georgia's 14th and really all over Georgia. And, there are a lot of people out there who feel unheard. A lot of people, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, but there are a lot of us who feel like, government's not working for the people the way it should.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for our veterans. I wanted to work for our seniors. I wanted to work for our children, work and fight for jobs. And that's what I got out and did every day on the campaign trail. At the end of the day, this is how democracy works. I offered the people a choice between myself and Marjorie Taylor Greene to represent them. And, she won the race. I conceded. That's how it's supposed to work.
So I want to ask you quickly about, so you mentioned, and I couldn't agree with you more, that I think there are more of us than there are of them, but they do make up a loud part of the electorate. And I think maybe not a significant one, but they do make up a chunk of the electorate. And, you're in the 14th district where Marjorie Taylor Greene represents. You ran against her and, you see the lies that she spews. I'm sure the voters see the lies that she spews, but yet they still believe her and vote for her. And, this kind of goes to the same thing in Georgia, kind of statewide. I remember on election night, thank goodness we have Reverend Raphael Warnock, who got sworn in, but also Herschel Walker lost by just a little over 100,000 votes. And I'm just wondering, as someone who ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's so openly and comfortable with spreading lies, what you think makes her believable and how voters could possibly turn out to vote for someone like her?
Well, when I look at some of the statements that I heard from, and I'll tell you this, I didn't just talk to Democrats. I talked
Yeah.
to Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, in this district, we're just too outnumbered by Republicans in the district. And what I heard from some of them was, well, she speaks her mind and she fights for what she believes in.
Mm.
But also, what I heard from a lot of them is she doesn't represent who we are. She doesn't represent
Mm.
our values.
Yeah.
Now, the numbers in this district were probably about 100,000 people who voted in this election than voted in the last election. And part of that were those who just weren't going to vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene because she didn't represent who they were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've become so partisan in our politics. It's red team or blue team. It's not
Mm.
always about, the candidate who's out talking to the people.
Yeah.
And that's where we've gotten. And, these media echo chambers, the far right echo chambers, that's getting through. That's that outsized voice that I'm talking about that people are, they're hearing these conspiracy theories. They're
Mhm.
hearing this misinformation and disinformation. And there's so much of it out there that people don't necessarily know what to believe. Coming from the world that I come from, intelligence and electronics warfare, I understand how misinformation and
Mhm.
disinformation works and how it always leads to unnecessary violence and
Right.
death. And that's what we saw on January 6th.
So I'm wondering, as someone, in that same vein on misinformation and disinformation, someone who, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, spews that, what is the best way to push back against it? That's something that I'm very curious about, especially in this very digitally connected world where there is so much information out there. Like you said, that becomes very susceptible for people just to, I think, kind of shut down as units. They don't know what to believe. So what is the best way to combat that based off of your experience?
Truth, brother. It's
Truth.
always a truth. You
Uh,
always have to push back against it. I
mhm.
don't have as big of a megaphone as Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I'm always going to be out there fighting and making
Yeah.
sure that the truth is heard. We have to
Absolutely.
always counter that because the
Yeah.
alternative, unfortunately, is to do nothing.
Right.
We
Right.
have to continue the fight, which is what
Absolutely.
I'm doing now.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about Marjorie Taylor Greene right now and kind of the committee assignment that she's been given. Yesterday, Kevin McCarthy announced that she will be given at least two committee assignments, one on the Homeland Security
Homeland
Committee,
Security.
which is a committee that she was taken off of because she denied 9/11 and obviously kind of spews chaos. But also she's on the Oversight Committee, which is kind of the lead committee that will oversee the investigations into Democrats and President Biden and his administration. So I'm wondering how much of a circus do you think that's going to be with Marjorie Taylor Greene at the helm, and how concerned should we be about that?
Brother, we should be very concerned about it. It's going to be chaos.
Yeah,
And look, this 118th Congress is less than a month old right now.
yeah,
Well, I think less than 2 weeks old
less than two
right now,
weeks.
to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
honest.
hmm,
Uh, but what we've seen so far is chaos,
yeah,
and we can expect to see that going forward in the
hmm,
next 2 years. And when you give people like Boebert and Gosar and these
yeah,
Freedom Caucus members, you know, oversight and homeland security, you're giving the people who push back against those agencies, DHS, uh, DOD, and incited an insurrection like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're giving them the keys to the castle.
yeah,
And they're going to go on a revenge tour against Biden. Nothing's going to get done of substance for the American people out of this 118th Congress. McCarthy, who pushed back against all of those lies until it was inconvenient for
yeah.
him. And this is
So
what you get. You get Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, and Lauren Boebert on oversight and homeland
yeah.
security. Yeah.
I mean, it would be laughable if it weren't so dangerous. I mean, these are people who don't believe in democracy, who have decertified the 2020 election, and who just spew these really crazy things. And one of the things, and I don't mean this kind
Spoken
of
at white
facetious,
nationalist rallies.
white
I mean,
nationalist rallies.
come on.
I mean, it's so antithetical to everything we hold as a value in this country. But I want to ask you about something that I always talk about with my friends in politics, and that's if you think Marjorie Taylor Greene actually believes in the stuff that she says. I mean, she thinks Jewish space lasers, or that she actually believes in decertifying the 2020 election. Is this all for show? Like, do voters understand this is performative, or do you think that Marjorie Taylor Greene actually believes in what she says and kind of supports this?
It's hard to hard to get inside of her head. And I took the same calculus that
Hmm.
you took in the beginning, is that a lot of this was for show. She considers herself some sort of provocateur. She'd been
Hmm.
working on it with her podcast and her video blogs for years before she ran for Congress in our
Yeah.
district. I took that calculus, but after meeting her and talking with her colleagues on the Hill, several of them, I honestly believe that she's a true believer in a lot of
Hmm.
the things that she
Hmm.
says. And that's dangerous. It's
Yeah.
even dangerous in someone who's doing it just for show.
Right.
Uh, so I think she is a true believer, but some of it is she's learned how to manipulate people
Hmm.
with the rhetoric that she uses, how
Yeah.
to, and I hate to use the word indoctrinate and
Yeah.
radicalize, but
Hmm.
that's exactly what it is.
Right. Right.
She's We have in this country a not insignificant portion of Americans who have been radicalized
Hmm.
by this white hot rhetoric that we're seeing from the far right. So
It
again,
that's
I'm gonna keep pushing back on that, and I hope you guys stay tuned for what
yeah.
comes next. I've been working with some amazing people, and we're gonna take that fight to those Freedom Caucus members.
Awesome. I want to ask you more about that as our last question. But before we get there, I just want to quickly ask about 2024, because
Mhm.
obviously the House serves for 2-year terms. And I'm wondering, first of all, I mean, I think you described the word perfectly, which is chaos right now, what we're seeing from the Republican Party. Have you talked to anyone in her district yet, or in the 14th district, about what's been going on? And if so, what do you think it will take for us to, maybe not us, but I guess the 14th district, to vote Marjorie Taylor Greene out of office? Is that even possible, given the composition of the district?
Well, look, brother, you touched on it right there with gerrymandering and the way our politics works right
Mhm.
now. 2020, when the census and the redrawing of the district lines, it makes it some districts not as competitive as they should be.
Right.
But competitiveness breeds it breeds competent leaders when it's
Hmm.
competitive.
Hmm.
Now, our campaign, we got more Democratic votes than anyone in the history of this district. Change is incremental. We're going to keep fighting that fight. And I talk with people all the time. People in Georgia's 14th, they want Marjorie Taylor Greene gone. There are
Hmm.
many of them, but we got to keep doing the work. And I got to tell you, the work that we did here in Georgia's 14th is a large part of the reason why Senator Warnock made it across the finish line
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
general. And, that was a close race in the runoff against Herschel Walker. It should have never been that close.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we got to keep doing the work. 2030, with the next census and
Hmm.
redrawing of district lines, it's not that far away, but we have to continue doing that work today.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you about, you briefly mentioned your future plans. What are your future plans? Do you have anything in store for running for office, or are you, what are those plans that we can expect from you?
Well, there are a lot of options available right now. I'm going to keep a couple of things close to my chest right now,
Yeah.
but we're working on, some things in the short term and potentially a run in the future.
Mhm.
It's just what we're working on right now is making sure that we're prepared for 2024 and to be
Yeah.
able to fight
Yeah.
everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, Marcus Flowers, thank you for your voice, and thank you so much for everything that you do. We will be keeping a close eye on you, and let us know what those plans are, and I'm sure all of us will be supporting you. Thank you for staying in the fight.
Oh, I absolutely will, Victor. Stay tuned. We'll be
Thank you.
putting out some information here in the next couple of months, I'm sure.
Sounds great. Awesome. Thanks so much, Marcus.
Thanks, Victor.
Okay, let's quickly get into some of the news of the day that was interesting. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of those people who, I mean, we have to pay attention to what she says, what she does, because this is someone who, again, now has more power than ever before. She serves on the Homeland Security Committee. She serves on the Oversight Committee. Those are two really important committees that have, I think, a very substantive role in this democracy. But with Marjorie Taylor Greene there, it's going to be nothing but, I think, like Marcus said, a chaos show, a circus. So we'll keep an eye on that. Just on that same vein, I just want to kind of make everyone aware of some of the committee assignments that we saw yesterday. First, we saw George Santos, who, if anyone watched the interview that Jill and I did yesterday on iGen Politics with Daniel Goldman, you'll understand just the extent to which this man is basically a fraud and must be indicted. Yesterday, Kevin McCarthy basically said that he will be given at least 2 committee assignments. So far, he's on the Small Businesses Committee, which is laughable considering his fraud and his kind of practices with business. And he's also being on the Science Committee. So, I mean, those are 2 committees that are representing the American people. Science, you have to believe in facts. This is someone who just doesn't believe in any facts. I don't even know if he knows any science. So George Santos is going to be on those 2 committees so far. We'll see which other ones he has. But there's just really sad lack of accountability against people like George Santos, someone who lies so easily, someone who is a fraud, yet he still is given power. And that is concerning. He's not given less power. He's given more power. And I think we should all be concerned by that. In the same vein, the House Oversight Committee is something that I'm going to be watching closely because that's a committee where, again, it's going to be looking at investigations into the Biden administration, into people like, Tony Fauci, or into Secretary Mayorkas. And so yesterday, Kevin McCarthy announced his slate of people who will be serving on that committee. And it's a concerning list. You have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Scott Perry, Byron Donalds, Gary Palmer. All of those people are people who denied the 2020 election. And, these are people who just don't believe in facts, who don't want to see democracy thrive. And now that they're on the Oversight Committee, it's a really, I think, dangerous place and time. And so we should all be kind of concerned about that and pay attention to that. And hopefully, with Democrats haven't announced their committee assignments yet, but I hope someone like Daniel Goldman can be on those committees, and someone like maybe Katie Porter or anyone else who is just not afraid to push back, who can be on those committees and can push back and against those lies and propaganda that they try to spew. So we'll see what happens in the House. We'll see what happens with these committees, but it's not great so far what Republicans have done. And I think goes to show we have to stay vigilant. We have to keep on pushing ahead of 2024 and vote these people out of office. One last thing, and this is a moment of levity, and I know a lot of my friends appreciated this yesterday, but yesterday, President Biden and Kamala Harris welcomed the Golden State Warriors, which is a basketball team, to the White House. And it was a great celebration. A lot of my friends who are in politics were there, like Mueller, she wrote, Rex Chapman, who was a former basketball player. They were all there, and they took wonderful photos. It seemed like a great event, and just kind of shows that, we can still have these cross kind of partnerships, with someone like President Biden with sports teams. And, there's a real sense of unity, I think, in that. And it brings people together to see that moment where, sports and politics, the intersection of the two, can be powerful. And I think that was a really strong showing. So President Biden, that was a really cool event, I thought. And there are many pictures online, and provides us with a little bit of levity in this moment of chaos and darkness. So that's all the news I have for you today. Just a quick programming note. Tomorrow we'll be back at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon with S.E. Cupp, who will talk about the Republican Party a little bit more, and what she sees as the biggest concerns as a former Republican, and what kind of her party has dissolved into. So that'll be an exciting episode. And then on Friday, if anyone of you are from Pennsylvania, we'll have on Congresswoman Summer Lee. She's a first-term congresswoman, a freshman, and she should be an exciting guest. And I know she's been on fire, so definitely tune in for that. Again, it's every day at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I will see you all tomorrow.